All right, here we are. How's it going?
Hi, it's going great. It's gorgeous. It's a good morning.
I okay, so my clients, bless them, they're always like, "How are you doing?" And depending on the day, I'll be like, "Well, that's a conversation for me and my therapist."
Yeah, yeah, right.
But
Yeah,
I really do. If it's like gloomy out, I'll be like, "It's kind of gloomy out today." I don't know, kind of a bummer, but today
I
it's nice
know.
and sunny. So it's
Yeah.
nice when you get a little bit of a boost from Mother Nature.
Yes, and we've had a big one this week over here. So,
Oh gosh, have you?
yeah, yeah, it's been like summer here. It's like 80, 85 degrees here for us in Maryland. So, yeah,
Nice.
it's
That's
been
good. Now,
fantastic.
Maryland is not close enough to have felt that earthquake from New Jersey, right?
Well, supposedly we felt it, but I didn't.
Yeah,
And
it's
no
funny.
one I spoke with felt it. So,
Well, because I know people out in Connecticut who were like, "No, I felt it." So, and of course, people in New
yeah.
York, and then of course, so I have been in a. I don't. This is not a podcast about topography or earthquakes, but I'm going to give a story anyway. So I lived in
All
Indiana.
right, we can explore some territory.
Right? We can talk about all the things. It's
Maybe
wonderful.
it's symbolic.
Maybe, right? I think it's indicative of no, hopefully not. Hopefully we're looking at smooth sailing.
Yeah,
That's the metaphor I would like is the smooth sailing. You know,
yeah,
the
yeah.
water when it's nice and warm. That's what we're looking for. But yeah, I lived in Indianapolis and I woke up in the middle of the night to an earthquake. And I don't
Wow.
know if dear listener, if you're familiar with in the weather in Indiana, it's not earthquakes. And so I
Yeah.
woke up and I was like shaking. Like my bed was shaking. And I'm like, is somebody like banging on the wall next to me or whatever? And I looked up and one of my photos on the wall was kind of shaking a little bit and it was so wild. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. It was really something. And then later in the day, we had another or an aftershock, or I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I was driving. And so I didn't even feel it. So then when I got to the place where I was going, people were like, oh my gosh, did you feel the second one? And I was like, oh no, not at all.
Wow.
So it's funny because
Yeah.
like people that I know in New York are like, that didn't happen. We didn't have an earthquake. I didn't feel anything. And I'm like, I think a number of
Yeah.
people agree with you.
Yeah. And I'm really okay with that. I'm okay
Yeah.
if I get through life not knowing what an earthquake feels like.
You know, that's a really good way of looking at that, right? Like I can say that I did. I'm very grateful that it was not the
It was,
absolute bonkers levels that we're seeing
yeah.
in the world that then cause tsunamis, that then cause even more devastation. Like,
Yeah.
and none at all is also very good. So we
Yeah.
that could be another thing. Climate change, is that what we're talking about today? No,
Oh my
we
gosh.
today are talking about you, and I'm so excited because I don't really know if I know any mother-daughter relationship coaches. So I'm really pumped for this
Yeah.
discussion. My clients, my participants are a lot of them mothers. Some of them have daughters, some of them have sons, some of them who knows because gender is not a binary and so on and so forth. But I'm just really excited to have you here because this is
Thanks.
while we talk about parenting and relationships and communication, I've never had something such specificity. So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
How did you get into coaching to begin with? And then we'll kind of talk about how you
Sure.
funneled into this very specific topic.
Yeah, great question. So I actually got into coaching way back, even
Mm,
before I became a therapist.
mm.
And so I started off doing life coaching. Um, oh wow. How old am I now? So like
Okay,
15 years ago,
I'm
maybe.
so sorry. I know we're just meeting. I'm like so tangential. I'm like blah blah blah. I literally this weekend I ran a half marathon and I got my bib and it said Meg Duke 38 and I was like, wait, is that right? It's like, was that am I 38? And I was with a girlfriend from high school and she was like, and she's 39 because her birthday's in February. She was like, yeah, Meg, that's how old we are.
Yeah, yeah. So exactly. It's harder to do the math when you're not sure what numbers you're starting with. So yeah, but about 15 years ago, I started that, and that actually led me into wanting to pursue clinical mental health. And then I decided after working for a long time that I wanted to go back to school and become a therapist.
Mm,
And so I've been a therapist for over 8 years now,
mm,
and I got into the mother-daughter coaching about 3 years ago, 4 years
mhm.
ago, three. So I, with the pandemic and everything becoming virtual, um, yeah, obviously the landscape of therapy has changed dramatically since all of that. And I was like, well, coaching was this word everybody was throwing around
Yes.
and just true, like throwing it around. But I was like, well, I actually have a really solid training in this and am
Yeah.
certified and have skills and understand the differences. And so I sort of like a phoenix, rising from the ash, the
Love that.
coaching flew back up. And yeah, and then I was led into life led me
Uh-huh.
um into the specific mother-daughter coaching. And I found a phenomenal program through Mother-Daughter Coaching International. And yeah, and here I am. It's really um taken on its own energy and life that I have just tried to pay attention to and follow that. So
Yes.
it's brought me here today and to creating Wise Women Coaching.
You know, I was shocked when we were introduced that Mother-Daughter International was a thing. I mean,
Yeah,
it is such, I mean, I don't want to walk around. I'm going to try to be linear about this, but as I've discussed already, and my listeners know, I'm like kind
yeah,
of all over the place, but we're going to touch on all of it, right? But
of
I
course.
I was just thinking like break the cycle breakers that we'll get to, like how
Yeah,
important it is to be really intentional. I have this conversation a lot in romantic relationships and partnerships, marriages, whatever that might be, of like we kind of have this Disney princess and they lived happily ever after kind of energy with relationships. We're like, well, we did the hard work of finding each other and falling in love,
yeah,
and deciding to get married and planning the wedding, which a wedding and a marriage are not the same. And now, and people, I have this conversation a lot, like the roommate conversation, air quotes, like they feel like they failed in some way if they have to discuss who's taking out the trash, who's doing the laundry, da, da, da. Like we're in
right.
love, so all of these things should naturally occur. And I'm like, no, there's no
No.
happily ever after you say I do. The same as my friends at Millennial Life Coaching had an email, a newsletter a couple of weeks ago, and said like athletes, Olympic athletes train every day, best-selling authors write every day. You and I both have to take continuing education units every single
Yes.
a certain number of years. And so it's wild to me that people feel like relationships are just supposed to naturally, casually occur. And perhaps some of that is unrealistic because we have a friendship that's always just been very chill and
Yeah.
relaxed. But I really, as I was, Googling and learning about you and the Mother-Daughter International and its existence at all and all that, I was like, that just feels so parallel to me. Like we're just supposed to, like blood is thicker than water. So we're just supposed
Yeah.
to magically get along with loved ones. And kind of on
Yeah.
the other end of that spectrum, some people in different generations are even like, well, I'm your elder, so you just need to respect me. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
how do we navigate that
Yeah.
intentionally? And it's so important to have you. I don't really even have a question. I just want to say, like, I'm
Yeah.
so
Well,
excited to be able to discuss this because people feel like, well, we just should
mhm.
insert here. And it's like, no, sometimes we need a little extra help. Sometimes, a lot of times, we need to be intentional about it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's um it's everything you just said. There's so many parallels between, our romantic relationships, marriage, partnership, and family relationships. We all need tune-ups. And the work I do is sometimes about a tune-up, but often it's much more than a tune-up.
Right.
Um, but so not only do we have this um, myth that relationships are just sort of like on cruise control or that they should be,
Yeah.
but we as in mother-daughter relationships have it also kind of baked in and internalized that this is a relationship that's just going to be dramatic.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
this is kind of the way it is, which is a little bit of the opposite, happily ever after. But
Mhm.
part of the challenge in the mother-daughter relationship is that there is this stereotype, the cliche of the
Yeah,
dramatic and difficult, strained mom-daughter relationship, um,
sure.
and that's just meant to be,
Hmm.
and that it's part of it is in resulting because that's women, this whole narrative that women are dramatic, women are emotional, so therefore,
Hmm.
well, of course the mother-daughter relationship is going to be fraught
Yes.
because of all
Yes.
that instability.
Oh, wow. I honestly hadn't even thought about that angle, but it's so true. I mean, again, don't get me on my soapbox about the patriarchy and all
Yeah,
of that, but
well,
it's so true. And then we
yeah,
internalize that because it's the
that's
external
right.
messages that we've been told, that we have been sold to us as gospel.
That's right.
And how could it possibly be anything but that? Mothers and daughters, women can't trust women with their
Yeah,
emotions. They can't be in leadership positions. They can't, whatever the things that we've been told.
yeah,
And to just expect that, that's interesting, kind of on the other side of that. And it's very true.
yeah. And so a lot of the work that I end up doing with women, and so I work with mom daughter pairs, and I also work with individuals.
Mhm.
So I might be working with somebody who's coming in as the adult daughter, or I might be working with somebody who's coming in as the mother of an adult daughter.
Mhm.
But what I tell everybody is, first, you are a person, and second, you're a daughter, and
Mhm.
then maybe you're a mom on top of that.
Sure.
So usually the women that are coming in as moms are kind of focused on that identity, that role as identity. And I get it. I'm a mom. I have two kids. It's a consuming role. And it's really, really important that we start the work recognizing, who are you? Who are you first?
Mhm.
If you can take away the role, the expectations, and that's kind of coming back to the soapbox that you don't want to stand on too long, um, but we really have to recognize how, I mean, to say hundreds of years is an understatement, but how these societal expectations of women play a part in the challenges that moms and daughters face together,
Mhm.
and so it's really important in the work that we begin to shift away from a perspective of blame. There's
Right.
enough mom blaming and mom shaming out there in the world.
Mhm.
It's really unfair. There's so much pressure, there's so much perfectionism that women are held to.
Mhm.
Yeah. You took a big sigh right there.
I did. I have every face of my client popped into my head, and so I'm giving an amalgam because, of course, HIPAA, but just
Yeah.
our internal, like, okay, so here's an anecdote from me from yesterday. So I'm making a raised garden bed in my backyard, and so I got these big 2x10s,
Nice.
8 feet long. I'm very excited about it. We can do it. Somebody have me on your show to talk about gardening as a novice. I'm so excited. Best thing. And like we put the beds together yesterday, and my 4-year-old came out, and I'd filled it. We put the plastic liner down and put the soil in, and he like jumped up and down. He was so excited because it's his
Okay.
tomato plant anyway. So, but
Oh,
I went yesterday fully, I'm fully capable of using a circular saw, of carrying a 2x10, of loading bags of soil onto a dolly. But I promised myself, thinking about how many of my clients feel like they are a failure when they accept help. I was like, if somebody
oh,
offers to help me move this, I am going to say yes. Because
yeah.
who am I helping by
Yeah.
saying no? Nobody. Who am I
Right.
hurting by saying yes? I mean, hopefully nobody. Hopefully the people who offer to help me are
Right.
able to lift the bags themselves. Right? Like we just have this expectation that we have to do it all on our own. And I talk about this with
Oh my
clients
gosh.
so much. Like I have
Yeah.
to parent alone. I have to figure out groceries. I can't ask for help, even with a partner, even with a
Yeah.
mom, right? And
Yeah.
talk about, like, we were meant to live intergenerationally. Like, we weren't meant to, like, I live in
Yeah.
Texas, family are all in Louisville. Like, we're so far away, and my parents were here for a week and a half a couple weeks ago, and like, man, I was spoiled. Like, what privilege. And I don't know how, I was wondering like what conversations you're having with people that
Oh my
help them to
gosh.
understand, like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not have it all together. It's okay to, like, you're not proving anything to anybody by saying like I can lift 8 bags of soil by myself without
Yeah.
help. What do
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
conversations look like for you to help people kind of get past that?
Yeah. I'm so glad you're asking that because there's, there's a few key parts to this. So there's that pressure to not have to ask for help. There's the pressure to be completely independent. And sometimes for some women, that comes from the place of I can't be a burden to other people.
Yes.
There's something that we
Mhm.
learn about in the whole mother-daughter coaching international, and I love this way of phrasing it is a culture of female service. And this this creates this feeling of like I'm here to help you. This is where I'm valued most. And then the flip side of that is I don't maybe have needs, or I shouldn't have needs, or I shouldn't have to ask for help. I don't want to be a bother to you.
Mhm.
And so there's sort of two pieces, the perfectionism, where we were talking about that made you bring this up,
Mhm.
and the need to sort of do it all perfectly because there's that pressure. And then there's also the pressure for some people that it's like I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to be perceived as a burden. And
Mhm.
so sometimes those two are just so nicely intertwined and braided together.
Yep.
Um, and sometimes it's about more of one than the other.
Sure.
But yeah, helping relieve ourselves of this need to be perfect
Mhm.
and that we can't ask for help. One of the things that I do with women is this process called mother-daughter mapping, and we kind of look back at the generations of women that have come before them and go through a series of questions that are really designed to help get you thinking about the women in your lineage as people, right? Not just your mom, not just
Yes.
your aunt, not just your grandmother or great
Yes.
grandmother, but like referring to them by their name,
Mm.
and as a way to try to help conceptualize who was this woman,
Mm.
who was the woman as a person, apart from
Yeah.
being a relative. And
Yeah.
we may not know all the answers to that, but it's part of what helps us to understand some of these common cycles and themes that get handed down through the generations, such as needing to be perfect, such as don't be a burden, such as um, you know, don't say what you need, don't speak your voice, be silent. There's no support in the were families supportive of you having needs, or was
Yeah.
it very much about you have to stay quiet in order
Mhm.
to have acceptance.
Mhm.
And there's several other themes as well, but we can start to understand it's not just it's not just from within the person randomly. It's handed down, it's systemic,
Mhm.
and this is part of how we take the blame and the shame off of
Right.
women.
I love that. I love that so much, right? Because if you're thinking about like a nebulous pink, because heaven forbid we do anything but the gender binary, you know, face on your family tree, it is very easy for us. I have somewhere else I want to go about like at what age are we started to start being just like robots with no feelings, and right, but that I'll get to that in a minute. But like being able to say like, oh well, great Aunt Sally who lived here and did this for a job, or whatever that looks like, to help really humanize people,
Yeah.
which duh, but also not duh at all, because like I said,
Yeah.
there is something about that. But being in that space too, I think that is where I'd like to go of like, I'm wondering at what age it is that we start to expect females, women to be robots, right? Like we're not a burden. We don't need anything. We've got it taken care of. We're balancing all of the things. We're spinning all of the plates. Like, and we don't have to decide on an age right now, but just like
Yeah.
conceptualizing right now of like, because I was gonna say like what's like when you become a mom, you just have to like
No,
instantly turn it on. But I'm like, but that's not even true because it's before
no.
that. And not everyone becomes a
Yeah,
mom, and those women still have the same expectations. I feel like
exactly.
it's heightened as a mom in certain ways that are only related to being a mom, certainly. But then I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, so is it like after you graduate college or like, but it's in college too. Are we not allowed to ask for help? And maybe a little more help, like we can ask for TAs or tutoring. But even in high school, like we're just supposed to be smiling and have it all together. And
yeah,
I I just want to acknowledge that and how hard it is. Like it's just ingrained in us that that
yeah,
is the expectation. And
yeah,
so for you to express a need or want somebody to help you lift a bag of soil or whatever it is, it's like, well, that's
yeah,
just proving that women are helpless or women are too
yeah.
emotional or whatever it is.
Right.
And then and it's like, no, we're just humans who need help and have
I mean,
feelings and
how,
thoughts and need sleep.
right. Yeah, right. Interdependency is wonderful. Healthy interdependency,
Right.
we need each other for support. It's okay to have needs. It's okay to ask for help with what you need. But um, I think about like I have an almost 4 year old and I have an 8 month old right now. I have two daughters, which
Mhm.
is just like just I'm ecstatic. I got into this work and I had my first daughter and then when I got pregnant again, when I found out I was having another girl, I was like I would have been thrilled no matter what.
Of
And
course.
just like wow, okay, I do this work and now I get to have two daughters. So I
Yeah. It's like you
just
willed it
was
to be, but through your
yeah,
profession and training.
through yeah, I was through the moon. So
Yeah.
um but yeah, so I think that this what you're talking about can happen, as early as toddlerhood, right? That there's things that people say to kids
Yes.
that are very um, gender roles and
Yes.
um people say it unknowingly. I'm not like shaming. It's cultural.
It doesn't have
It's
to be
this is
malicious, but it is there. And
yeah,
sometimes it is malicious.
yeah,
But either way, it's
yeah.
definitely there.
Right. There is a malicious one, and then there's not. And I would say a lot of it's unconscious,
Yeah.
period. Um, but I mean, I'm very mindful of how often, I say to my daughter, like, thanks for being a great helper. Oh, you're helping out so much. And of course, kids love to help at that age. They want to participate. That's
Of
normal.
course.
And I'm just kind of like, okay, we're also going to highlight other things other than helping because that's part of the things that women get um, pigeonholed into in
Yeah.
terms of where their value lies is in helping and helping and being aware of others. And all of these are good things. It's not to like knock it down and say we shouldn't have that and that's a quality to not foster. I mean, I'm a helping professional, like, you
Right.
know.
But if you could though, think about like what is your degree in?
So clinical mental health
Okay.
counseling. Yeah.
Right. And so I have a social work degree and like
Yeah.
look at it's one of the very few female dominated,
Oh, I know. I
right?
know.
And not
Yeah.
and the men with whom I have worked, I have a supervisee right now who I think absolutely hung the moon, identified as a man, is it AMAB? Like it's just it's interesting, but then I also too I just want to go on a quick tangent to say like it's funny though because you see some of these agencies or whatever with all of these women wanting to help, educated, working to provide and change cycles and stereotypes and whatever. And so often there's a man in the leadership position. It's like they went
Yeah.
and found the one man with the social work degree or the clinical mental health degree
Yeah.
and gave him that job. And for better or worse, there are men out there who are amazing bosses. It's just
Yeah,
also in that
yeah.
interesting. Um, but yeah, and I actually that you just made me remember, and I don't know the source, I apologize, but somebody posted a person fully non-maliciously, according to the poster, was saying that a man was like, well, I really hope my first one's a girl so she can help me with the others. And it's like,
Oh,
his
oh,
baby
that
hasn't
breaks
even
my
been
heart.
formed yet, or like maybe it's in the uterus, but like hasn't been given AFAB, AMAB, like we don't know yet. And like this is this man's vision. And I don't fault him. I'm not mad at him.
Yeah, I
But do you
know.
hear what you're saying?
I
You're
know. It makes my
already
heart hurt for
you're
that
already forcing this
girl.
child to you're parentalizing this child that doesn't may or may
Yeah,
not even exist. I can't remember where they were in their pregnancy journey, or it doesn't matter. Like,
yeah.
I hope it's a girl so she can help me with the others. Like, first of all, so no
Uh,
expectations for boys then. Boys don't have to help.
that's it. I mean, and this is never like some people say to me, few people say this, but I've had it brought up to me, are you saying that men don't go through challenges? I'm like, no, I'm never saying that. Of course they
Oh
do.
gosh, of course.
And this is what I'm focusing on because there are some specific unique things here.
Mhm.
Um, but
Well, and that's for
yeah,
somebody else then to specialize in fathers
and
and
that's what I
sons.
say. I'm like, there could be the male version of this. There could be the father-son version of this. And I'm sure, we could have our Venn diagram and we would find plenty of overlap. And then we're going to find some places
Yes,
where, it's completely different. And
of course.
we
And
still
not
have to,
every
we just,
mother, and not every daughter, and not every father, and not every son, and what every parent and a child, like he, she, they, that's no one ever
yeah,
fits into the same thing. And
yeah,
we all have some similar shared experiences, mothers and daughters.
absolutely. Yeah, that's it. And that transcends culture.
Mm,
That's one of the things that's been pretty incredible in this work is I mean, yes, there are cultural differences. My husband is from a different country. We discuss our cultural differences and whatnot. And this is something that um, transcends that. It's something that's pervasive and that is, here we go back to, patriarchy. And that is something that people almost all over the world that has touched almost everyone. And
mhm,
so it's a disservice to everybody. It's a disservice to the men, it's a disservice to the women. And so it's not to say men are winning, as we're looking at this mother-daughter work and that women are losing. We're just saying, here's what's happening to the women.
mhm.
Um, I don't
This is
remember
the
my
same thing
original.
about like the Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. It's like just because I am saying save the whales doesn't mean fuck the dolphins. It just means I want to put some
Right.
energy into
Exactly.
whales because they don't have, and Black Lives Matter because historically they have not. And of
Exactly.
course, all
That's
lives matter, but white
exactly.
lives have always mattered. And of
Yeah.
course, dads and sons matter. And
Yeah.
that is a whole other conversation. If somebody is out there, a father and son specialist, come on to this show. We'll do fathers and sons.
Yeah, right. I would
100%.
love
I'm
that.
literally not kidding. Shoot me a DM. And this is very important.
Yes. You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it. So, yeah, I think that when we find, you come across a post that says, "Oh, I hope I have a girl so she can help." It's that's the thing we have to, that's a great example of what we have to unpack and what we're trying to unburden and let go of. And how is that cycle handed down, for a woman? And what is it stopping her from, how is it preventing her from being her authentic self? How is
Mm,
it showing up? In what ways does she feel her life is a little bit cut off? And that's the coaching work there with both mom and daughter, whether I'm working with them as a pair or individual, is that it's really important that we get to look at each woman and her needs. And that part of the biggest problem is that you weren't allowed to have them. You weren't
yes.
allowed to have emotions. You weren't allowed to speak your truth, or the only way it could be spoken is, in a fit of rage, or by, having to sort of, um, manipulate a situation to be able to get what you want, because being direct wasn't okay.
Right.
Uh,
That's
and
exactly, well, I
so,
mean, think about in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where she says the man is the head
yeah,
of the household, but the woman is the neck. And it's like, and that's a movie, but also based on her real
I
life.
love,
So
I love that you just quoted that.
I am, first of all, if I am nothing if not a reference queen. Even in my therapy sessions, I'm like, have you seen an episode of Friends? And they're like, yeah, yes or no. And I'm like,
Yeah,
well, I'm gonna tell you the story anyway, because I've already started. But the manipulation that we have to have, instead of just being able to be candid and
yeah,
communicate,
yeah,
say, like, this is something I'm strongly thinking about, or I'm passionate about, or I
yeah,
want to do, but instead I have to convince you otherwise. And again, that is a specific movie in a movie, or a situation in a movie, but that transcends to a lot of
yeah,
interactions and a lot of family structures.
yeah. And when we hear the word manipulate, I think many people feel like, ooh, that's bad, and it's like, okay, it doesn't feel good to be manipulated, and it's a way that people are trying to get their needs met. And yes, it can be really harmful, and it can also be very clever. And so we're trying to take the stigma out of so many things, to
Mhm.
recognize this is happening for a reason. And so with the coaching, one of the big pieces that I do is help women identify the cycles that have been handed down,
Mhm.
and which ones of these do they feel like they don't want to pass on anymore? What do they want to end in their own life, right? So whether you have kids or not is really not the point, because all some
Yes.
people are motivated to change for their kids. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. At the end of the day, the focus will have to come back to you
Right.
in order to do your healing, your transformation, saying yes to yourself, giving yourself permission in ways that maybe you never have before.
Mhm.
And that's like really can feel really scary.
Oh my
It can
gosh,
feel
of
really
course.
scary. So, so I have this group called Cycle Breakers,
Yes.
because that kind of change, um, we need to be supported in it. And that's part of what I do as a coach, and certainly as a therapist. But
Mhm.
what I kept thinking when I'd be working with women is, oh my gosh, I want to get this client and this client and this client and this client together and put you all in a group and just go talk. You will
Ugh.
be able to be
Yes.
there and support each other. And that's where Cycle Breakers came from, is that we don't need to do it all alone.
Mhm.
And many women are feeling this desire to show up for themselves more, to do to heal, to make changes, to not carry on things from the past,
Mhm.
to do it differently. Um, Whether, again, like if it's for their kids, like I work with a lot of women who are pregnant or want to be
Mhm.
pregnant soon, and they're going, I don't want to do this the same way, and I want to
Yeah.
show up differently. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like they want to start um, a new chain with a new link, in a way, if
I
you,
love that.
yeah,
I like too what you were saying about like breaking the chain, because I acknowledge I've had this conversation with clients a lot, where it's like we're not siloed. We don't live in, social work's big tenant is person and environment, right? And it would be obtuse of me to think that anything that you do, even if you're doing it for your kids, it's going to impact you. And I think sometimes when it feels icky, like I have to advocate for myself, I have to take up
yeah,
space, I have to ask for help. I say, I'm like, of course, as your therapist, I would love for you to be able to do this for you. And while you are doing it, you are going to be displaying to your children, for those of you who
yeah,
have, what it looks like to advocate for yourself, to have appropriate confrontation, to acknowledge that I'm not going to put up with this, and this is what a boundary looks like, that it's okay to ask for help, because they see you doing that and they know,
yeah,
like, oh, I'm like, mom went and ran a half marathon this last week, which my kids are 2 and 4, so they won't remember that probably, but
yeah,
like it's not a bad thing for mom to
right,
spend some girl time and to
Yeah,
take care of her physical health and take some time away. And I'm not sitting here being like the beacon of motherhood, by the way, but I'm
yeah,
just saying like this is a really good example that I do have. So if not
yeah,
for yourself because it feels icky, doing it for your children to break that
absolutely.
cycle so that they
Absolutely.
don't feel like they can't take up space, like they have to be a robot, like they can't have emotions, like they can't ask for help. Fighting
That's
through the
it.
ickiness for them, if not for you, will also help empower you and make changes for yourself as
Yes, that's it. And I tell people like it's if thinking of them gives you the courage to show up differently, then think of that. Think of your kids. I'm okay with that. Like
well.
I'm
Yes.
right there with you. It's fine because at the end of the day, you are going through this experiential process. And that is we have to have that. We have to experience something new to become
Mhm.
new. We do a lot of intellectualizing. I do it. I love thinking. I love analyzing. And that's not the place where change really happens. And so it can, but to a point. And so helping create a space, a container for women to come together to recognize, oh, I'm not the only one that's feeling this way, right? Because how often do we feel like the only one?
Oh my
And things are so
gosh. It's
it's
isolating. A lot of things
it's
about being a
yeah,
woman, being a parent, a mother, being is isolating because you do think this is a me problem, which means I need to figure it out because clearly something is wrong
yeah,
with me.
right.
Yeah. So it's nice to see somebody else. That's what I love about group therapy or group coaching or whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
Is, you feel so validated by other people. You get to help other people. They get to help you. Sometimes they
yes,
bring up things that you didn't even think of. You're like, oh, that is an issue for me, or I hadn't thought
yeah,
of it that way. I just love being in that safe space, which I'm sure, we just met, but like I've already like the energy. Of
yeah,
course, it's the safest space and such a beautiful place
yeah,
for people to be their authentic selves and
yeah,
seek that support and change. You said it earlier, and I want to repeat it. Like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. We
yeah,
have to try something new to get into a new
yeah,
space. And new is scary and change is scary.
yeah.
And we are just not willing to repeat those cycles. Like I have two girlfriends and they both have interesting relationships with their mothers. And I'm very lucky. I mean, we certainly could go into mine too, but I'm very lucky. But while I was reading, we did a book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents.
Hmm.
And we were reading that like a
I'm
chapter.
familiar. Yes.
Yes, of course you are. Of course you are. I knew as soon as I brought it up, like, oh, I'm for that. Um, and we were really going through it, and like we would talk about it. We'd do a chapter a week or so and talk about it. And I was like, my mom needs to read this. And may my grandmother rest in peace. She had beautiful things about her as well. And my mom still has not. This was years ago. We were doing it during quarantine. It's been like 3 or 4 years since I've given her my physical copy of this book because she just can't get through it because it is written about her life. Not really.
Yeah.
She's not the author,
Yeah.
but she's like, it's too close to home and I want to be able to process and I want to be able to get through that. But like, I literally can't read this. I have another girlfriend who's in that same friend group,
Painful.
same thing, where she's like, I'm trying. I want to, but so it would be really nice maybe for them to be able to have this sort of space where it's like you don't
That's
have to
right.
be doing the intellectual and emotional labor by yourself.
That's exactly right. And, I mean, there is a difference in doing kind of the deep dive healing work, healing your trauma, right? And I love doing that. And that's my focus in my therapy practice.
Of
And
course.
the thing with the coaching is you're not dwelling in that past.
Yes.
We're touching on it, we're naming some things, and then we're talking about how to be
Mhm.
now and
Yes.
moving forward. And so with the coaching, it's like um it's happening in real time. And this is one of the reasons I named my coaching practice Wise Women Coaching, because we do have that wisdom in us. And for some of us, we maybe are more in touch with it than others.
Mhm.
Um, but it's there. It's
Yeah.
there. We may just not have been encouraged to be in touch with it. And
Quite the opposite
when
sometimes. Hide that, stuff it down. Shh.
that's right, don't shine too bright. Um,
Yeah.
that's enough.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you
So
discussing the difference between coaching and therapy as well for those listeners who,
yeah,
if this is one of your
yeah,
first episodes, or because we've talked about it before, but the idea of like, and not always in therapy, because I do a lot of solution focused therapy. And so sometimes we're just looking at
yes,
goals and moving forward, right? And I
which
love,
is great.
I'm a solution focused human prior to any sort of education, but because I just don't like I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, right? Or the
Oh,
enthusiast.
that's my wing.
Yeah, I'm an enthusiast wing challenger. What numbers are
Okay.
those? Yeah, which is, yeah,
Oh, you're a 7 wing 8.
yes.
I'm an 8 wing 7.
I was like, why am I getting such a good energy from you? Yes, right?
Yeah.
And so I acknowledge that. I talk about it with my own therapist. Like, how do I really allow because I talk about with my clients all the time, like, what a hypocrite to sit with the bad sometimes. And so sometimes we unpack, we process, we really dig in deep in therapy. Some people do things like EMDR, which is amazing.
Yeah, I'm
Very
one of those
expensive.
people.
Yeah, and very expensive to get trained in, which is why I am not yet. But and that's really sitting in it and going through it and visualizing being
Absolutely.
back in there. And then coaching, right?
Yeah,
Where it's not
totally
like,
different energy.
right. And so I just appreciate you bringing that up. And now I'm rambling. I'd love for you to actually
Yeah,
say that.
no, you're totally on point. You're taking words right out of my mouth. It, it's it's important because we don't all heal the same way. We
Mhm,
don't all change through the same uh path. And I really personally get energized by having both
mhm,
avenues to offer to individuals. I've found, I mean, I can honestly say I love, love, love doing both kinds of work.
mhm,
And the thing with the coaching and helping people kind of stay in the present and think about where they want to be going, it's just a whole different energy. And some people, that's exactly what they want. It's more, it suits them more. And for others, it's like, yeah, give me the therapy, give me the deep dive, or maybe a combination of stuff. But
mhm,
with the Cycle Breakers group, what I love is that, we're encouraging, it's a space where it's like, you're here, it's okay to take up space. This is not a place to hold back and say, I'm worried that I'm talking too much. You may feel that, you may be thinking that,
mhm.
and that's
I actually have
okay
clients who say, like, I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. And I'm like,
in their individual therapy
yes,
session.
how
Yeah,
funny
I
is
know.
that? I'm like, honey,
Yeah.
what I don't say honey to my clients, but like it's a one of that
Yeah.
like, baby, what are we supposed to be doing?
I know. I
But we
know.
are
I know.
ingrained in our minds. I'm talking too much. I'm taking too much space. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is literally your therapy session.
Yeah, exactly. And so the beauty of the group of being with other women is that you get encouraged, right, by somebody that says, no, I want to hear from you. We haven't
Mhm,
heard you speak at all.
mhm,
And, or for somebody who doesn't have a hard time taking up that space,
mhm,
it's like that, like going back to what you were saying about modeling for your kid, that thing that feels icky and uncomfortable for you.
mhm,
You in it, I talk about this with my clients, like you are giving permission when you get to show up fully. It is just like this automatic permission that the other person has to then get to show up fully for themselves. You are modeling, it's okay. Oh, that's how we do it. And
mhm,
so we can do it in a parenting role, and we can do it in this dynamic with the group and going, oh, that woman, wow, she really can speak her truth. She's really going there. Wow, she's been talking for a few minutes.
mhm,
Okay, that's okay. Wow, I would like to be able to do that. So it's we get to experience one another. We get to experience receiving that support.
mhm,
And I think the other thing here that you and I haven't mentioned at all yet is just sort of, unfortunately, all of this, don't be too big, know your place, be perfect, can breed this sense of like competition or having to be the
yes,
best,
yes,
and
yeah,
to come together and be in a group of women where you are being encouraged to show up fully can be so transformative if you've never gotten to have that in your life, or you didn't have that in your family, or you didn't get to have a group of friends that was like that. And it's of any age. I work with women in their 80s. And and in their, well, mid to late 20s. And so it
I was
doesn't
to say,
matter
I
how
just
old
want to
you
take
are.
a second on the 80s because I just really want to encourage everybody, like, it's never too late.
Yeah, it's
Like,
not.
what, honestly, oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional. What a gift you're giving people to like leave their life without that burden. I'm like crying right now. That's amazing. That's huge.
Yeah,
I've never cried on this
it's
podcast before.
oh, I'm glad I'm a part of it.
Yeah.
It really means a lot to me, and I mean that sounded so trite. That's like
No, it's
such an
not. I'm crying, so it's
understatement.
fine. Like, I think we're on the
It's
same page.
it's you know, I didn't just randomly come into this work because I thought it was interesting. Um,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of difficult, painful things that I had to move through in
Uh-huh.
my own mother, daughter, and women in my lineage journey. And it has been utterly life-changing,
Hmm.
um, all coinciding at a time when I was becoming a mom myself.
Yeah.
And so when we can shift out of a place of just looking at somebody who has hurt us as bad, mean, whatever, and we can see the whole picture as much as that's possible and
Yeah.
hold compassion, and again come back to see the women in our lineage as whole people and think, wow, what would be different if they could have had support? What would have been different if they could have felt like it was okay to have their voice, if they could have been encouraged to,
Hmm.
pursue education, if they could have been encouraged to have the career they wanted, if they were told, you know, you're okay the way that you are and you're enough and you don't have to live a life of service to be
Hmm.
of value,
Yes.
what would be different? And that I want that for my girls,
Yeah.
and I want that for myself.
Hmm.
And I wish it for any women who didn't get to receive it, that came before me.
Hmm.
And um, it's really not too late. And if you can feel freer, in however many years of life you have left, why the hell not? Like, what a beautiful gain to have,
Hmm.
it's only making your life richer and more
Yes.
meaningful and more fulfilling.
It's tough because I feel like that age of people, and here I am being pejorative, like all people over. No, that's not what I'm saying, but there is a generation of people ahead of us and beyond who were taught or believe, or that's the external voice that they've internalized, or whatever it looks like per person, that therapies for people with more money than problems. And of course in this situation would be coaching as well, or
Right.
suck it up, move on,
Yeah.
um let it go. And it's like, it again, coming back to asking for help, this is asking for mental health, emotional health help.
Yeah.
Same as I'm bringing it back to the soil bags. Like, I can
Yeah.
do it myself. It will be
Yeah.
much harder.
Yeah.
It was so quick. There was a person who was admittedly much bigger than I was. He was tossing that soil up on it. It was like stacked 4 high, and I
Like it's a
couldn't have done
feather.
that. Did I want to be super sweaty? Yes. But anyway, and I did. I feel like the mature thing to do would be not to give a personal anecdote here, but you mentioned it, and I was thinking of it before you said education, and then you said education, and then I was like, hey, it's my show. I get to say what I want. So,
Yeah.
not that you're suggesting that, but my mom, and I mean, I'm white, so please keep that in mind, but both of my parents are first generation college students. And my mom was told by her parents that like high school. That's it. Her parents didn't even finish high school. And she had to go and sneak to our local branch campus of a state
Wow.
university while her parents were out of town and enroll in school. And I'll give you two guesses as to what she did: elementary education, or
Yeah.
elementary specifically. She was elementary, so yeah. Um, and I think about that a lot. I've thought about this for a long time. I mean, I've known that story. My parents, again, what privilege, have always said, like, it doesn't matter where you go to college, but you will go to college. Again, what privilege. But
Yeah.
like, I think my mom would have had a really brilliant legal mind. Like some of the ways that she
Yeah.
described certain things or her passion for certain topics. I think, wow, but that, I mean, college was literally told to her, no, that's not
Yeah.
for you. You have a uterus. How dare you?
Yeah.
Um, and there is, I mean, look, we are both helping professionals, so this is coming from helping professionals. There is nothing wrong with being an educator. I'm just saying nothing else seemed like going to college was such a leap, the idea of doing
Yes.
anything else after that. And of course, now she's got a master's and a plus 30, and I've seen her teach, and she's magnificent, and the world's a better place for her having done that for 30 something years. But the coulda, woulda, shoulda, what ifs, and we don't want to live in what if because we can't change the
Sure.
past. But just acknowledging, like, maybe I guess where I'm going with this is for some of us to name our parents, like
Yeah.
name them, um, and give them a real story instead of just like, oh, my mom. Like, no, this woman who did this thing, who overcame these things, who was told all these things from the 60s and so on. Like, maybe we might be able to unclench and have, that's my word, by the way. That's not necessarily a
Yeah.
word.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe have some more empathy, not to allow boundaries to be overstepped and not to allow
Right.
ourselves to be the doormat, but to understand
Exactly.
from whence they come, to
Yeah.
be able to have these conversations in a more meaningful way. And I really, that brought it back to like the great aunt with the pink blob on the, the
Yeah.
tree,
That's it.
naming that person and their experiences and their story and how we all got here.
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly it. And recognizing whatever limitations we had or have been had and how some have moved through
Yeah.
and or how some have been really hurt for them.
Hmm.
And just we have to acknowledge that, things haven't been fair and things haven't been available to women. And that is a part of, intergenerational
Hmm.
trauma in some cases, and in other cases, just a part of what has been passed on as normal. And um, so for us to acknowledge that there's nothing, because I've when I've met with some potential clients, they're going like, I don't understand, like, I'm not one of those women that have um been told that I can't do things because I'm a woman. I'm like, well, that's great.
Yes.
And I'm not here to say that you have. And that's not exactly what this is about, but it's like there's something under the surface. And then the way it shows up between moms and daughters can often be that discord,
Hmm.
that pressure cooker of of you know who's getting their needs met, because there's not enough room for both of us to have our needs met, is sort of the unspoken subtext in a lot of cases, where
Oh,
I need you to help
it's
take
not a
care
piece
of
of
me.
pie, right?
Yeah.
Equity, empathy, compassion, access.
Yeah.
It's not pie. We can all access it. And I think it's
Yes.
interesting that you just said that too, something kind of on the flip for me, like where some people are like, I didn't, I'm not rich, I'm not blah, 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 whatever. I didn't have privilege. And it's like, if we can acknowledge the system and the structures in which we live that favor, for example, I'm white. So like me being a
Yeah.
white person. And for me, it would be so obtuse and incorrect for me to be like, I don't have like, right. And I think it's kind of the
Yeah.
opposite of like the people who are saying, I never was told I couldn't do anything because I was a woman. I'm like, well, yeah, in the 90s, we were told, like, not, I love the
Yeah.
Barbie movie for many reasons. There were notes, but whatever. Like, go to the moon, do it. Like, of course, we did hear that. And we
Yeah.
also heard a number of other things. And so it's like, if you can sit with the idea of like, hey, maybe you did benefit from this thing over here. And hey, maybe you're not exactly where you could be had you not participated in something that was systemically not for us. Like
Exactly.
it might be.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And holding all of that together. And when I work with women, um, understanding, okay, what else has been baked into the family? What is the socioeconomic um system and values? You know, what is what was your family's even just were they immigrants? Were they first generation? Were they, oh, there's a bee in my office now, right here. Um,
Ghosting.
yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, that was distracting me. Exactly like what is your ethnicity? Just all of this is a
Yeah.
part of just understanding the whole picture more and understanding the things um that do influence us, whether we think they do or not.
Right.
And so yeah, it's just being able to acknowledge,
Mhm.
at a minimum, acknowledge that this is
Consider.
part. Yeah, consider.
Yeah.
That's a great word for it.
Right.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I could talk to you for at least another hour, but I have to let you go. So can you
Yeah.
please, it'll be in the show notes, but can you please tell everyone where they can find you?
Yes. So Wise Women Coaching is on emilybittner.com.
Mhm.
And for clients who are interested in therapy in Maryland, it's emilybittnertherapy.com.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much for this time. Um, thank you for sharing your experiences, your education. I'm so excited for this episode to come out because, like I said, it's something we haven't really done before, and it's very important. So, thanks everyone for sticking with us through the conversation and my first time crying on camera, and which I'm
Thank
not
you.
ashamed of at all, but I just wanted to acknowledge the first time. Be curious, not judgmental, and we will definitely see you back here next time.